Hello, Region 1 FFA. I am coming to you live, well, recorded, from Bruton, Minnesota, just west of St. Cloud an hour, southeast of Alexandria, north of Wilmer. And some might call it the middle of nowhere, but we feel like we're in the middle of everywhere. And I'd like to share with you what we do here and why. I'll tell you a little bit about myself and just want to think about things and tell you things that I hope will be helpful as I used to be in your spot. Speaking of your spot, I was vice president after a couple of other offices of my local GFW Pioneer Express FFA chapter down in Winthrop, Minnesota. I never ran for region office and nor state office, but continued on to get my state degree and American degree. And so I'm a proud former and current, I guess you could say, FFA member and now alumni member. My wife, on the other hand, she did not have that opportunity. And so without a chapter in her school and without a co-op program where she could go elsewhere, she's really unfamiliar with what FFA is. And so wearing a blue jacket, watching this presentation, just know that not everybody's able to do this. Your community has invested in you. And I hope that you're very thankful for that because there's a lot of children, kids, youth, adults around the world who don't get the opportunities that many Americans get, much less the opportunity to be an FFA like you are today. So as I said, I'm going to show you around my farm, tell you about how I got here to where I am today, and then talk about what I hope you think about going forward. So welcome to Gerlindy Farms. I'll give you a quick tour of the farm. This is the view from the end of our driveway. I don't know if you can see my mouse, but right in the middle there's a blue house. That's where I'm sitting right here in the corner. This is our garage, and this is now Creamery storage. And this is my parents-in-law house. There's a 4-acre pond here in the foreground, but after these trees. And this is our freestall dairy barn. And so as you can imagine, this is our farm, but my name's Lucas, and you can see it's Gerlindy Farms. And so how did that come about? Well, I know this is probably a little too old for you guys. These two people have broken up probably several times, but back when I was young, Katie Holmes there on the left and Tom Cruise on the right, they had a celebrity nickname, and it was Tomcat. And so you can imagine we need a nickname at our place. And so put it together, Gerlindy. And this is my parents-in-law, the Jennisons, Linda and Jerry, and that's where Gerlindy Farms comes from. They normally aren't standing still. They're always working. They manage our cattle herd and the land and everything else. And here they are on hoof trimming day at our farm. We trim the cows' hooves a couple times a year. As far as my family, that's my wife, Elise, on the left. Henry's 4, Lucy's 8, and I'm holding little Conan. We got to get away for MEA weekend, so this picture is pretty recent. Gerlindy Farms was established in 1979. Jerry and Linda started farming not too far away from here, and 4 years later, in 1983, showed up at the spot we are now. This picture here is a little bit dated. One of the things I wanted to show is that things changed. This entire pond used to be weeping willows, not well-managed weeping willows all the way around. And right here on the upper left, there's a granary, and that granary's gone. And we do something else there, and I'll get to that in a second. We've got kind of 4 tenets that we want to think about anytime we're going forward. We had the first 3, and we felt like we needed to add number 4 because the advent of technology and AI and all of that is making us think if we want to compete and go forward, environmentalism, sustainability, being family focused, that'll get us so far. But if we aren't adapting technology, we don't think we'll have the opportunity to carry on to the next generation. So I know you in Region 1 are in Northwest Minnesota, but we're a little further south here in Stearns County. And so, as I said, we're kind of in the Bermuda Triangle between Alexandria, St. Cloud, and Wilmer. And I grew up just north of New Ulm, if you know where that is. So how I got from here to there, it's just a 2-hour drive, but it's a little bit longer. And I want you to think about that as far as traveling in agriculture. First couple stops were at the St. Paul campus of the University of Minnesota. How did I get there? Well, I grew up on a dairy farm, as I said, near New Ulm. And I had applied to several schools. And the reason I chose the University of Minnesota, I was going to play football at a lot of the other schools, supposedly. But my grandma was milking cows with me and made me realize that the only place I would have my agriculture friends was at the University of Minnesota. And so that made the choice clear quite quickly. And so what did I want to do at that point? Well, I thought the most service I could be was to be a veterinarian. I loved working with animals. I loved working with people. It seemed like a great fit. But for those of you familiar with the University of Minnesota's Minneapolis campus, this is Smith Hall. And Smith Hall houses chemistry. And I got to know chemistry really well, actually got to know it 2 times. And because they thought I should, just study up and stick around for a second class, I got to take it a second semester. That's not what you want to do for those of you who haven't failed a class. It's not a good way to progress. But the good news is, even though that meant a lot of extra bus trips, if you live in the St. Paul campus, you take a 10-minute bus over to Minneapolis, back and forth, back and forth. I had to do that a whole extra semester for that chemistry class. The second time I did that, I ran into one of these 2 people, and it is the person on the left, and that is now my wife. She also was talked out of passing chemistry on the first try, and literally chemistry brought us together. And she's wearing her crown because she was a dairy princess, and we really fell in love there and got engaged at the University of Minnesota right outside the beef barn. And she had a job that she really enjoyed but didn't love, working as what's called a food broker. She graduated wanting to be a cheesemaker, and we just simply couldn't find any cheesemaking jobs as I was coming upon graduation, but I could find a job for myself at the time. This was in 2009, the midst of a recession. Things looked really bleak. And with her not loving her job and not really sure what skills she was having add to her life goal of becoming a cheesemaker, we took a chance and headed east. Actually, we headed way east to Vermont, and that's where my job was located. Vermont has about 1,000 dairy farms, had about 1,000 dairy farms at the time, has just over 500,000 people, so like Minneapolis and St. Paul combined, but it has the Holstein Association. And we spent 2 years there. And I really enjoyed that job. My job was starting to change, and I thought it was something I could do for a long time, but the fact of the matter is I was on the road all over the country. I visited over 35 states, and that meant leaving my wife behind in a home that was in a place where she didn't have very many friends. It wasn't a very big agricultural community, and we really missed a lot of things. So I had interned in college at a place called Horde's Dairyman Magazine. Horde's is a magazine that was invented in 1885 and has a long tradition in the dairy industry. And Horde's Dairyman was happy to have me back, and we were excited to get a little closer to home. And when we made the trip, it was very easy to make friends. Being back in an agricultural community, we had a lot of people with like minds, and the dairy community there is really strong. We were in Jefferson County, just east of Madison, Wisconsin, And it was just a really fun place to be as young adults. But after 2 years there, this cheese idea, what I didn't tell you was in Vermont and Wisconsin and throughout my travels, by this time I had visited 44 states, and Elise, my wife, came along to many of them. And by this time we had visited over 50 on-farm processing facilities, because when Elise turned 10, she decided she was going to move home to the farm. When she turned 16, she had the dream of becoming a cheesemaker because she visited the National 4-H Dairy Conference, where they go to a farmstead cheese plant. And she decided then and there, this is how I'm going to come back to the farm. Milking cows, but making cheese, that's something she could be passionate about. And she dedicated her life to it after that. And actually, as we were leaving Wisconsin, she participated in the first ever Wisconsin grilled cheese competition, and wearing her University of Minnesota hat, won the whole thing with her mom at her side. So that was kind of a fun way to end our 2 years in Wisconsin. But the other reason we were coming home, Elise was pregnant and we were having a baby, and growing up on a farm was very valuable to both of us and something we wanted to instill in our children. So this is Lucy, a few weeks after being born, and we moved home in November of 2012, and so we've been here just as long as Lucy is old, 8 years. And as I said, Minnesota at the time had 3,800 dairy farms, now closer to 2,200. This is just 8 years later. We had a population, and still do, of just over 5 million people, but there's only one Padua. So one of the reasons we moved home was it just seemed like fun. We were fulfilling our dream, and we thought that um, we could come home, we'd make a big splash by bringing some fun back to this kind of conservative German Catholic area, and we were going to win the St. Patrick's Day parade in Padua with this costume. We brought in this local celebrity, but actually what happened was these gentlemen showed up, firefighters wearing drag, fought an actual fire that happened. The Sedan Fire Department beat us in the competition. And so, our dreams were kind of crushed. We thought, is this the actual place for us? But we charged ahead anyway. Um, we started making cheese at the University of Minnesota's pilot plant, which was 2 hours away and a bit of a slog. And the next year we came back, and we didn't try to win the contest, and we didn't get any points for graphic design, but we slapped this on a Dodge Durango that was driving by, actually driven by my parents. And we said, hey, wait till next year. We were breaking ground in 2013. We continued to practice making cheese at the University of Minnesota. I think they did that 3 different times. We got a graphic designer put together, and because we had visited 50 different processing facilities, we pretty much knew what we wanted it to look like. We wanted a place where even 1 or 2-year-olds could look down and see a cheese making operation, so we knew it had to be 2 stories tall. We wanted it to be able to easily get equipment in and out, and we wanted a lot of headspace, because often cheesemakers have trouble with some of the equipment not being tall enough, and the room becoming very, very warm. And so we built our dream and broke ground in 2013, as I said, and got it all done by 2014. Along the way, we used and learned about this new thing called Kickstarter, created a video, and ended up raising $41,000, or basically our down payment on the facility, in 30 days from 500 people, something that definitely wasn't available just a few years before. And we started making cheese. And since that time, we've given over 50,000 tours. We've now, this year, done e-commerce to roughly 4,000 people around the world, mostly within the US, and had tens of thousands of visitors in our cheese shop, and had tens of thousands of customers of our cheese at wholesale and retail. And my wife is bringing in big awards now, as well as an assistant cheesemaker that she has since trained. I continue working for dairy farmers, but I no longer work in the magazine role. I completed my master's degree in animal science, and now I work for Midwest Dairy and Minnesota Milk, 2 organizations that worked for dairy farmers in Minnesota. So I spend my time working at the state capitol, and I think what's really interesting, you think back to that failed chemistry class, at the time I was wanting to be a veterinarian, and I'm in a job I think I am a better fit for and enjoy much better than a veterinarian would have ever, those clothes just wouldn't have fit on me as well. And I don't mean that literally. Um, Talking to people, communicating with people, teaching people happens to be my passion. And so I get to do this during the day, working for the greatest people in the world, dairy farmers. And then on weekends and nights and every spare hour I have, I teach people and sell cheese to them by teaching them about agriculture. My wife, I told you about that grocery store job that she didn't originally like. It turns out that knowing how grocery stores work is such a valuable skill. And 3 other cheese plants that she worked at along the way, I didn't tell you about in Vermont and Wisconsin, and then for a short time here in Minnesota, were such valuable things. Her and I both wanted the dream job the day we graduated from college. Heck, we would have rather skipped college and had the dream job at age 18 or 19. But the more you can develop and the longer you can wait, I think the better off life will be. I think I wish I was there with you to listen to questions and talk to you more one-on-one. But I think if I was sitting in your shoes, I'd probably first of all wonder, when is this guy going to quit talking? And that's a good question. But Wyatt said I'm going to be here for about 3 hours. No, I've just got a few more minutes. But second of all, I hopefully would want to know, what are the things that are going to get me farthest in life? What are the things and activities I should spend my time in that will help me get far? And I think my advice to my, 16 to 18 or maybe 12 to 18-year-old self would be, enjoy the moment. I grew up in a great household and was able to participate in many activities because my parents allowed me to. We were never rich, but we were never poor, and I know not everyone's in that scenario. Some people are disadvantaged. They're not able to afford things, or their parents, due to work or other responsibilities, can't make the time for them to be in those. But you're here today, and you're in FFA, and this virtual world has taught us so much. So I would just take as much advantage as you can of the organizations you can be involved in. I would get out of your comfort zone as much as you can. The more different things you can do, the more valuable that would be. Like I said, I've worked for a couple of dairy farm magazines, and I got my master's degree in animal science. And all of those things have made me much better at my current job. There was a job similar to this job available right before I was out of college, and I wanted to apply so bad and quit college because I thought at that point, I knew I wasn't going to be a veterinarian. I knew talking and communicating was my thing. And I thought, wow, if I could just go start that right now, I can end college a semester early and go from there. But this is hard to believe and maybe a little crushing to say. At 16 or 18 or 20 or 22, there's just so much in the world that I want to tell my previous self from my future self. So I'm telling all of you that you just don't understand. And getting a wide body of experience and getting time under your belt and using each day the best you can is going to be very, very helpful to you. And the other thing I would probably tell myself is, financial stuff is really important. When I was 18 and graduating high school, and probably mostly when I was 22 and graduating college, I had little understanding of interest rates and what a mortgage was and what a 401k is. And There's so much available online now. In a 20-minute video, these things can be summarized for you. And if you are earning any income today through an SAE or other means outside of an SAE, you should really think about setting at least some of that aside for retirement, or setting some of it aside to invest in your future business that you don't even know what it will be yet. Because I was pretty good with money in high school and college. Didn't get into credit card debt. Was always on the brink of being paycheck to paycheck or scholarship to scholarship at the time. But had I known then what I know now, I would have invested much more wisely, as the George Washington saying goes in the opening ceremonies. And finally, I just want to say, I think we were asked, I talked to a class that Wyatt was in with Miss Shaw, and I think sometimes I'm 33 years old, my wife is 35, and we're often seen as a success. And I want to tell you that we aren't. I don't mean that in a negative way. We've had many successes. We're having fun, and we hope this keeps going for a long time, in a positive way. But life can slap you upside the head anytime. If you know any restaurant owners this year or last year in 2020, you can understand what I'm saying, that the world changes. And I think in agriculture, especially as we think about technology, it's probably more likely to change in a significant and rapid way in the next 5 years more than it has in the last 50. And so if you understand the financial aspect and you can understand the technology aspect of what's coming and what could be, or even get into something like computer programming, or at least know computer programmers or software engineers, or that sort of field, melding the two is, I think, going to be a really big niche moving forward. Now, we still need every other career you can think of. We're going to need farmers, and we're going to need veterinarians, and we're going to need everything in between, salespersons and technical specialists and agriculture teachers. So if you want to be one of those, that's great. But I think no matter the sector you're going into, you need to look at where the puck is going to be, not where the puck is now, borrowing the Wayne Gretzky quote. So here, we've had a great year. I'm going to share my screen again. We started a delivery business in the middle of a pandemic, and that's really helped us weather through, so to speak. But like I said, we can't rest. One of the things that we're really looking for is, what is technology going to do to us, or what could technology do for us? There's some robotic dairies in Minnesota. Actually, about 2% of all the cows in Minnesota are milked by robots today, and I think that will continue to rise. Labor is increasingly a hard problem to solve, and this fills a big gap in year-round, all day long labor. First, actually, this week we are going to be putting in activity monitors in the cow's ear, and I think there's this perception out there, at least I had it when I was in high school, that if you just do things a little bit better than your parents did if you go into farming, or if you approach a job the same way as an agriculture technician or agriculture salesperson and do it a little bit better than the people who were there before you, you're going to have a great career and it'll last a long time. But unfortunately, like I said, I think things are going to change so rapidly that that's not the case anymore. And you're going to need to be a lifelong learner. I need to be a better lifelong learner. And the only way to do that is to continue searching and seeking and looking for what's next and where do you fit into that. So for us, this is our likely future. We're going to keep making cheese. We're going to aim towards adding robotics, And Lely robots that you see here, this is not an advertisement for them, but they started in about the year 2000 in America, in about 1990 in Europe, and they're on number 5. And number 2 came out about 10 years ago, and they've had 3 more replace the first 2 since that time. So that's just how that little corner of the world is changing. And I think about all the other areas in agriculture that are going to change. And you saw that we traveled halfway across the country. But I think if you really want to be prepared to take on the world, I think your theme for today is right on. Go places, see things. Once this pandemic's over, get out as far as you can away from where you are with an intention to come back. And worst case scenario, you'll find something that you love even better than what you had originally planned to do. I always say to get as weird as you can as you're going through college and taking internships. The weirder your resume can look, the more enticing you will be to a future employer. And so get uncomfortable, get lost, get messy, but keep that compass pointing towards home, because if you want to at least do something that your parents are doing or something around home that you see, you can still get there following that compass. But I would highly recommend you jump through a few hoops to get there along the way. Sorry that we can't be there in person today, but if you do have questions, you can email me at lucas@redheadcreamery.com. If you want to learn more about our cheese plant or other operations, you can go to redheadcreamery.com. And I believe Wyatt knows how to get in touch with me via phone. Thanks for your time, and have a great rest of your convention.